Welcome back to another episode of Get Weird with your host, myself, Brittany Barbieri. What is happening, everybody? It is 2026. I would like to say that this is the first Friday of the month, but it is not. It is the second Friday of the month, and it is the 9th. However, I cannot believe that we are already this far into January, as I feel that the days are just slowly just passing us by. I wanted to start this year off with a Bigfoot case. Now, this is a fun one because let me lay out some quick little tidbits before I get into it. This particular case I read many years ago. It was sent to me by an individual who said that they had seen it online as like an actual report, and the person wanted to remain anonymous. And I remember printing it out of like the email and putting it in my file. And I questioned it for a while on if it was real, if it wasn't real. A lot of times there will be cases or stories that are fabricated online, and there's actually no merit to them at all. They're not real. They're just kind of, storytelling. And so I wanted to share this case. One, to start off the year with a little bit of mystery, but also I love the idea of asking you. And I think what triggered this for me too was obviously we've all seen Stranger Things. And if you haven't, spoiler ahead, or if you have, you're going to get this reference, is that I believe. And so I want to share this story and leave it up to the audience. Now, I will tell you as a researcher, I have done a lot of research on this case, and I have not found any legitimacy to it, like no documentation through search and rescue. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it's not true. I might just not have access to those files. They might not be online in any kind of database, and I'm unable to find them. It's been told many times online through different accounts and other podcasts and other radio shows. And, there could be some truth to it. And I don't know. I am going to just take the place as the storyteller with this one. And at the end of it, folks, I'm going to leave it up to you. Do you believe or do you not believe? So you could be the analytical kind and say, there's just not enough information on the back end as far as reports or documentation or who this person was and what their account was. Or you could go on the other side and say, I'm going to jump out on leap of faith here just leap on it and say, yeah, I think it might be real. I believe. So to get into it, this is a story from many years ago. And again, it was sent to me from somebody who said that they had read about it online and wanted to share the account with me and wanted to ask if I had ever heard anything like this before. And I had not. And it sounded too real and too good to be true. Now, in most cases with Bigfoot and with Sasquatch, they're kind. It's very rare that we have any. I could count on maybe one hand amount of accounts that we have where they were aggressive and attacked and hurt somebody. It is very rare that we have any actual attacks by these alleged creatures that live in the deepest, darkest places of the woods that remain hidden. And as a field researcher myself, if you antagonize a bear, a grizzly, you're gonna die. But for the most part, keep your distance and respectfully watch from afar, like we see those videos with Yellowstone. Hello. All right. Keep your distance, people. Just keep your distance. So when I got this story, I really had to process it and sit in it for a while. I kind of had to roll it around in my head and think for a second if it could be real. So I'm going to leave it at that. I won't tell you any more about how much I dug into it to try and find some validity into it. I'll just leave this episode as a do you believe or do you not believe episode. And maybe it will stick with you for the rest of the day and you can think on it. Or maybe you'll try to look it up yourself or try and Google it yourself and try and find it out there. I know that there are some podcasts that talked about it. There are, when I researched into it after it was emailed to me, there are several podcasts, Reddit, Instagram, TikTok. There are several of it. So could it just be a social media story? Probably. Or is it real and the person truly wants to remain anonymous because of the flack that they received for it not being true, even though it was true? And there's just some cases that the search and rescue and local sheriff or police department choose not to have public for a certain reason, to protect the public or the civilians and fear that they might run into these creatures and maybe not go to the parks anymore. And, who knows? There's so much to it that, I don't know, it leaves you pondering. So let's get into it. So there's this story, okay? And let me title this story as Rescued by the Woods People, the Bigfoot River Rescue Story. So imagine you're alone in the wilderness. You're paddling down a quiet river. You're an outdoorsy person. This was a female. She was actively involved in hiking and exploration and adventure. So being alone on a day hike or a day river in a canoe or a kayak really was an everyday occurrence for this person, according to the original statements by this anonymous person. And bears never really scared her. She was very familiar with black bear. She was very familiar with different types of animals and knowing the right protocol and how to handle herself, right? Well, there's still danger in the woods. Anything could happen, mountain lions, wherever, no matter where this case was taking place. And so imagine you're this person. You are very well trained in the field and you do this all the time. But then you're in your canoe and disaster strikes. Now all of a sudden you're taking on water. You're heading down, let's say, a jagged area of the river where there's a lot of rocks. You're panicking. You're trying to keep yourself afloat. And you're deep in the woods. You don't have a satellite phone. And you have no way to contact anyone for help. So panic kind of takes over, but you also are trying to figure out how to stay alive. So you get injured and you're afraid and completely alone. And you get knocked unconscious from getting slashed around in the heavy river or maybe the rapids, whatever case. So in this particular story, the woman was canoeing by herself deep into the woods, far away from any kind of local town, civilians, or even near like a local campground. So no one would really hear her scream or cry out if she needed help. You wouldn't hear her. And unseen forces of just accidental things that can happen in the woods when you're by yourself, unfortunately, happened. And she capsized in the canoe and unfortunately became unconscious and was injured. And to the testimony of this particular person, from what was explained to me in this email, was that a group of hairy humans, from what she can remember, grabbed her out of the water and stabilized her and got her safely out and grabbed her canoe. Let's not forget that part. They continued to keep her warm in what she described as being like a cave, as a shelter. They made fire. She remembered through pieces of waking up of them trying to give her a certain type of plants. And there were no words from these, more grunts and like type of like verbalization of grunting and things like that to like eat, take this kind of thing. She remembered the cuts and stuff on her legs and things like that had odd plant-like wraps on them. She also noted, speaking about how there seemed to be some like younger juvenile ones that were like playing with her and like coming up and kind of like touching her and poking her. But there was like an elder female of the group that was trying to like heal her, help her, and give her things and tell her to rest. And she said she remembered being in and out of it and really at one point thought she was dreaming and had no idea what was going on. She recalled being there for roughly 3 days. For what she said once she had been rescued. It had been about a 3-day time. And after tending to her for those days, she was apparently well enough by that point to get up and go back into the river. And so the female of the group, apparently, as the story is told, basically helped her out to the river, to the canoe, where her canoe was. It was no longer capsized, and it was up on the bank, and basically had made gestures to tell her to head up the riverbank towards where help would be found, where she would be found. She didn't really know how to, one, express herself in gratitude out of confusion, fear, frustration, anxiety, and being in this very surreal element as if she was still unconscious or dreaming. She didn't know how to really perceive this. So after much grunts and gestures up the river, and kind of like, I guess, as it was stated on a couple of accounts when I had researched this, in further research, they said that the one female kind of like guided her up the river, walked the riverbank, continuing to like gesture, like, go this way, this way. And it's not unheard of for animals or like dogs even, right? To gesture you to follow me, follow this way, in danger or what have you, when they need your attention. And growing up with dogs and different wild animals myself, we even had llamas that when there was danger, they would make a warning sound on the property of something unfamiliar to them that they saw as a dangerous threat to their herd. And so they would notify us and make this gurgling sound. It's a really incredible sound, and it's a warning call. It's an actual warning call from either the head female or the alpha male, and letting the herd know, hey, there is something that is dangerous in sight. And they would always do it when we were in Estes Park, Colorado, always do it for the large bears, always. And we had some big ones up there, like huge, massive brown bears that were just big, big bears. And they, always would make a call, even if there was a mountain lion. Not bobcats so much. They really didn't care too much about the bobcats. Mountain lions, they would also make the call for, which those bubbies, let me tell you what, and they mean business. And so it's not uncommon for an animal to be like, hey, you need to like follow this way or gesture or make a type of call or whatever. And you just need to pay attention. It's understanding the animal. So she listens to the female, and again, they've now tended to her for 3 days, so she has now lived with these creatures in this cave. She has no idea where. She had no idea where she was. And they took her to this river and got her back in her canoe and got her off on the right path. She recalled that the search and rescue teams actually were all on the river looking for her, because that was the last place that she had been seen. And notified or whatever, and they confirmed her location. And she basically gets there, and they asked her, what happened to you? You were gone for 3 days. And she was reluctant to tell her story. She didn't want to come across as a loony bin, and she was still very confused in disbelief of what she experienced, if it was real or not real, as the story goes. So she kept the story to herself. She said that she was unconscious. She managed to come together. They'd mentioned like, well, your wounds seemed like you were tending to your wounds. And she was like, I tried. She basically made these excuses up because she was afraid of telling the truth and what they might think of her. So she began to say, oh, I was just very out of it. I remember hitting my head. I was really banged up. I was scared. I had taken in water, and so forth. And so for them, for search and rescue, it just became another like, oh, well, inexperienced. But she really wasn't inexperienced in the canoe, but they took it as such and, got her to a clinic to have her fully examined and checked, and everything was fine. No concussion, no nothing, And apparently she remained anonymous for a very long time, and had heard of a similar story of like a rescue situation of a Sasquatch helping a hiker or something like this, and decided that she would anonymously tell her story to someone. And then that story exploded online. At least that is what was sent to me in an email discussing how they heard about it and wanted to know if I believed this case was true. Now, this was years ago, over God, 15 years ago now, maybe less than, somewhere 10 to 15 years ago, I was emailed that story. And I remember immediately being like, what? I got to look this up. I know that there are a lot of people, and working in this field, working in cryptozoology as well as ufology. Now, ufology is a whole different ballpark because working with individuals that are coming to you in regards to their abduction account, a lot of the times they are very fearful when it's true, when it's real, when they really believe that they have experienced something supernatural like this. They have a hard time like opening up about it out of fear and reluctancy that you're going to just think that they're crazy, like loony bins. People they need to go into mental health asylums, And so I understand I want to remain anonymous because a lot of emails I get will be from like a fake email and the person won't even give me their real name. And they're like, I just want to tell my story to somebody so that somebody gets what I've gone through and either can tell me that other people have experienced the same, or is this like the first time you've ever heard an abduction case like this, or a sighting like this, or an experience like this. They just want an answer, but they want to remain anonymous and they give you a fake name. And that's fine. I'm good with that. I have no reason to pry in deeper. I'm just thankful that you felt comfortable enough to share it with me. And a lot of times I get those emails and that's fine with me. I don't need to dig deeper. I can take it at surface level because it didn't happen to me. So I can't tell you it didn't happen to you when you're telling me it happened to you. And you're so scared you're staying anonymous because either your job or fear of society or the people or the groups or your name being tarnished because you're going to be considered like a crazy person. I get it. It's not my job to judge you. It's not my job to go around and say, you're a liar, you're telling a fake story, I don't believe you. It didn't happen to me. So I don't know if it's real or not. All I can do is be supportive and be there for you. And I've done that for so many years professionally. And what's crazy to me is the similarity within similar cases of individuals. And sometimes I sit there and go, well, you could have looked up cases and went, oh, I had that too. I experienced that too. And then it becomes kind of a cluster of misinformation in your own head. And then you start believing that also happened. There's so much to it. And when you get too deep into that side of it, you lose the faith of believing in something so incredible. And we don't have all the answers. And we learn every day that so much of history, so much of the world around us was hidden from us and lied to us for some reason. I don't even know. I don't even think it's for protection. It's more for control, if you ask me. And so I just can't sit there and say, I don't believe you anymore. Now, when you come at me and you're like, I had this 8-foot lizard man and a baseball bat and he was hitting me with it, then he belted into Elvis Presley songs, I'm going to take a step back and question what kind of alcohol you drank that night and what kind of, stuff you got at the shop. Maybe you didn't get the right dosage, I might have some questions. But overall, I've heard so many interesting cases that, and from very, professional people that have no reason or want this kind of attention and want to remain anonymous. They just want to be heard. And so in this particular case, I'm left with this conflict within myself to say, this story could be true, or she did hallucinate and it wasn't real at all. Maybe she was living with bears for all we know. There's that case of that young boy who got lost in the woods for like 3 or 4 days and he said, I was taken care of by a bear. What? What if it wasn't a bear, but he perceived it as a bear and it was like a Sasquatch? You know what I'm saying? Like, we really just don't know at the end of the day. And this case is one of those perfect examples. It could just be a well-fabricated online case that circled the internet, which I despise at times because of things like this. And then we get into these horrible rabbit holes of, well, it's not true. And then you get people attacking people, or the field attacking each other and calling each other crazy for wanting to believe in it because, I've seen Sasquatch and they don't do this. Or, listen, shush. We just don't have enough proof or answers. And I sit more on the fence of, I want to believe. I want to believe that these creatures would help an individual out in the woods and take that risk and say, I'm going to help this person because they have cognitive thinking and they understand and compassion and empathy, and they want to help you. And then on the other side could just be a really great story that somebody made up on Reddit, and it circulated and it went crazy. It went viral. It went on Twitter. It went everywhere. And everybody started talking about it. And then it became the story it is today. And it never was anybody at all. It just came from somebody's incredible storytelling brain, and they felt that they would make it sound true. And like I said, folks, I'm a researcher. I dug as deep into it as I possibly could. If you have been to conventions where I speak about my work, or if you've been even to the recent convention last year that I kind of dissect a little bit on the Mothman case, and I provide the facts, and I provide the historical documentation, and I provide the newspaper clippings, and I provide the police reports, and I also provided the animal documentation that took place at that time. And so again, even with that one, I'm not going to tell you what to believe. Just here's all the details. This is my job to tell you the story. Now you do with it what you want. So with this particular case, my question to you, the listener, is, do you believe? Or do you believe it was just a really well fabricated story that circulated and got people interested and rejuvenated a little bit of faith and hope that we still don't really know the world around us, and there might still be really cool, unknown creatures or supernatural things around us that aren't always out to hurt us? Who knows? So with that, I leave it with you. Whether you're heading to work, or you just finished at the gym, or you're riding a bicycle, or whatever you're doing, listening to me, I hope that you have an amazing day or night, whatever time you're listening to this, and enjoy the day, but also don't be so analytical. Don't break down so much stuff all the time and try to find answers all the time, because everything is still a mystery. We really don't have all the answers, and that's why there's such things as theoretical science. They're theories until they can prove them to be true. And in a lot of cases, we may never be able to prove them to be true. So where do you sit? On the faith of believing without seeing? Or you have to see it to believe it? So I'll leave that with you. Until next time, don't be afraid to get weird, everybody.